John chapter 8 from verse 1 it says, Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Teacher, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what say you? This they said, testing him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger, wrote the ground, as though he had them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they who had it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing before him. When Jesus had lifted himself up, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those your accusers? Has no man condemned you? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Then spoke Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. The Pharisees therefore said unto him, You bear record of yourself. Your record is not true. Jesus answered and said unto them, Though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true. For I know from where I came and where I go, but you cannot tell from where I come and from where I go. You judge after the flesh, I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true, for I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bears witness of myself, and the Father that has sent me bears witness of me. Then said they unto him, Where is your Father? Jesus answered, You neither know me nor my Father. If you had known me, you should have known my Father also. These words spoke Jesus in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour was not yet come. So this chapter is about a woman who was caught in adultery. So it's funny. It says Jesus was from Mount Olives, and then he went to the temple early in the morning. It says that in verse 2, early in the morning. So it means somehow Jesus is an early riser. Then the scribes and Pharisees, these are the people who ended up crucifying Jesus. Scribes are people who had knowledge of it's called the Torah, the writings that Moses had given, the commandments of those, like the commandments and the laws of Moses. They understood it deeply. So they brought a woman who had been caught in adultery to Jesus. Then they said, Teacher, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. It's funny, it takes two people to commit adultery, but they only brought the woman. I wonder where the man was, because it takes two people. I will just stick to the story. But I think it's because they looked down on women in those days, and they were testing him so that they would find fault in him. And then they said in verse 5, now I just told you, the scribes and Pharisees understood the laws of the Old Testament very well. Then they said, now, verses 5, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What say you? Like, what do you say? So they wanted to catch him, like, to prove that he was not of God by disobeying the commandments that God gave Moses. But then it says that Jesus continued writing on the ground. It's not really recorded what he was writing. This is just when you watch the Bible, can I say analysts, some of them say he wrote down all the names. This is not recorded. I am just giving you my opinion. He probably wrote down the names. And then, so when they continued asking him, the first time when he talked to when the woman was brought to him, he just ignored them and continued writing on the ground, whatever he was writing. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. After they continued insisting the second time, he told them, "He who is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." And then he looked down and continued writing whatever he was writing. So I have a feeling that whatever he wrote down, it was something that was secret to all of them. Anyway, but let's just stick to what was recorded. Then it says, "And they who had it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last." So when Jesus said, "If any of you has no sin, let him cast the first stone," they all went away. And they brought her. They had brought her because they had not committed adultery. But then Jesus is saying, "He who is without sin." Then Jesus was left alone with the woman, and then he asked her, "Hey, no one has convicted you? No one has stoned you? Woman, where are your accusers?" And then, where are your accusers? And she said, "There is no man who has condemned me, Lord." And then he says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." You see, in the beginning, the Pharisees brought her because they knew they had not committed adultery. Then when they go to the presence of God, if you continue reading with chapter 8, he keeps on explaining to them that he does not bear witness of himself. The witness of two people is correct. So he does not bear witness of himself. Even the Father who sent him bears witness of him. So it's like most times in life, we are like Pharisees and scribes. We often condemn people because we don't really understand their struggle. I could stand in front of a crowd and say, "Hey, my neighbor, she's such a gossip. She's what can I say? She's a bad person. She commits adultery." If you just see the number of men who come to her house, so it's easy for me to condemn an adulterer if I'm not doing adultery. But just because I'm not doing adultery does not put me in a position to judge them, because chances are I am lying. I'm full of unforgiveness. I'm full of envy of even my neighbor's property, which is part of the commandments. Somewhere in the Bible it was written that if you break one commandment, you have broken them all. Because whoever said, "Do not commit adultery," also said, "Do not kill, and you shall not kill." So you see, the Pharisees had forgotten that the same God who had said, "Don't commit adultery," also said, "Do not kill." And yet they had brought her to Jesus to stone her to death, which would be an act of killing. So here I learned that if you break one commandment, you have broken them all. That's why it says in Matthew somewhere that, "And you shall not judge your neighbor." It is not for us to judge. Even if Jesus, the Son of God, in this scenario, didn't judge her, and yet he was without sin, we are not supposed to judge. Like, we hold no right to judge anyone. We are not here to. We cannot tell anyone that person is such a bad person. We have no right to judge, because if you have broken one commandment, you have broken them all. That's why when the Pharisees were told, he didn't say, he who is not, Jesus didn't tell them, if you've not committed adultery, cast the first stone. That was even a dare. He didn't tell, he said, rusha hiyo ya kwanza, rusha hiyo mawe ya kwanza. So sometimes we go to God and tell God, hey, so and so did me wrong like this. If let's say you're a couple, you're like, this person cheated on me. God, remember them. You're there praying so many harsh things for them, and you forget even you have broken a commandment. The 10 commandments were more of a condemnation. It was telling us that we can't really achieve the Pharisees and scribes thought if you keep a commandment, you understand, then you've kept the law. But Jesus, who is the fulfillment of the law, they were trying to make him go against the commandments. But then there's somewhere, I don't know where, that Jesus says, I came to fulfill the commandment, not to break them. Because the 10 commandments showed us the standards of God the Father. When the 10 commandments were being written on Mount, I can't remember, my God, to Moses, he was showing us who God the Father is. But because we could not attain that standard, then Jesus was brought to the world so that he would be like anatutetea. If you go through him, then we can, we get this victory in him. We get to attain that standard that God wants because we've gone through his son anyway. So the whole thing that I get from here is, you don't get a right to judge someone because you don't understand their struggle. The scribes couldn't understand why the woman is committing adultery, so they thought they're justified to stone her to death, and yet stoning would also be another breaking of, yes, it would be fulfilling what Moses said, the commandments, but then again it would lead to death. And Jesus says, do not kill. You have no right to judge someone else. Okay. Then John chapter 8 verse 15, it says, and Jesus told them, you judge after flesh, I judge no man. So clearly everyone likes to judge, even me. But our judgment is often because we don't understand the other person's struggle, and we judge of flesh. And Jesus says he judges no man. So that for the next time you want to accuse someone of something, we should remember that Jesus said, we think in Matthew, judge not and you shall not be judged. We leave the judgment to God, because anytime you think you're better than someone, just remember, when you go to the presence of God, he won't tell me. I won't tell him, God, I've never fornicated. If I stole, then I've also fornicated. It says, if you break one commandment, you have broken them all. And because we have all broken one commandment, we have all broken all commandments. Therefore, we hold no ground to judge anyone. So it is a lesson that we can learn for ourselves. May God help us to never think highly of ourselves, because we have all broken all commandments by reasoning of breaking one. So I hope we learn. I often remind myself, and the Holy Spirit also convicts me when I start judging, that I hold no ground, because I have broken all commandments by virtue of breaking one. Yeah. So judge not, and you shall not be judged, because by the same measurement that you judge another, you shall be judged the same way.